Hey, this is Dallas. I'm going to share with you the world's worst group live sales presentation ever, which happened to be mine. A few lessons I learned from doing it, and I'm also going to release my inner Superman for you. God. So many years ago, I had hatched up the brilliant idea of having my very first live group sales presentation. See, I was in a direct marketing company. This is going back 15, 20 years ago. But I was having some pretty good successes doing a lot of one-to-one selling. But I heard someone say to me, if you really want to build up your wealth and your riches, you need to start selling from one to many. So there I hatched my idea. I was going to have my first opportunity to sell to a group of about 50 people at one time, and there would come in the riches. So my plan was perfect. It was infallible. It was genius. I had rented out the community building inside of our apartment complex where my then fiance, now wife, and I lived at the time. So I rented that out, invited about 50 people to come, made sure we had the big projection screen, the projector, food and drink. It was going to be this awesome affair. It was going to be incredible. I invited 50 people. I knew that maybe not all 50 would come, but at least 40 of the 50 were going to show up. And even a day or two before the event, my wife had been out shopping and she came up and she said, hey, I got some great news. I met somebody that I thought would be great to come too. So I invited her. So I invited about 50 people. She invited one person. And to that, of course, I said, honey, you should probably leave the selling to the big boys here, okay? But thanks so much for the thought. More on that later. Now, as I was hatching this magnificently genius, infallible plan, my wife did point out to me, Dallas, since we are broke and we have no money at all, would this be the best idea right now to go ahead and spend like about $300, because we're going to be spending about $100 to rent out the facility, spend another like $50 or $100 on the food and the drink and the hors d'oeuvres to make it, look swanky. And then to go ahead and rent the big 10-foot by 10-foot projection screen and then the projector. Say, is this the best idea? And to which, of course, I confidently answered, listen, honey, we're going to spend about $300 to do this presentation, and if 40 people come, $200 per person that joins our team, that's about $8,000. I'm pretty sure I can do the math on that one. So the evening came. The big night arrived. It was a 7 o'clock presentation. We got there about an hour and a half early, setting everything up, getting all the chairs set up, getting the food, the drinks, the projector, the screen. Everything was ready to go. It was in December, so it was already dark outside, had the glow of the lights on. Everything could not have been more perfect. I had learned from a then mentor of mine that since I was expecting 40 or 50, I only put out about 25 chairs because it always looks good then if you added in more chairs as the more people came, like more people turned out than you could imagine. So that way you weren't tearing away a bunch of chairs. So 6:30 came around for the 7 o'clock event. Nobody was there. No big deal. It was about a half hour early. 6:45 came. 6:50 came. 6:55 came. 6:58 came. Now, that was bad because nobody was there out of the 50 people that I'd invited that all said, oh yeah, I'll be there. But I also had a couple of my team members that decided to come and kind of in support of, but then they were also maybe expecting some people to come too. Well, they didn't have anyone come, so it was the two of them watching me sit here at about 2 minutes till 7 o'clock presentation time with 0 people showing up, having spent about $300 of the money. Oh my God, why won't you just come? Now, of course, at this time, your inside voices kind of start talking to you a little bit. You start hearing the one, which is kind of the rational voice of possible reason saying, well, maybe all 40 people just had something else come up, or maybe they were all in some kind of an accident. But then beyond that rational voice becomes kind of the voice of, nobody showed up? Come on! But the one shining light from this, fortunately, was at 6:58. Nobody was there, meaning the only people that got to see me lick my wounds was my then fiance, and 2 other people in my business. And then the headlights came. Somebody showed up. 1 person showed up at about 1 minute till 7. Could it have been any worse? Was it any of the 50 people I'd invited? Of course not. It was, however, the 1 person my wife invited. Irony. So there I was. I had someone sitting there, very front row. They were sitting here, and about 6 feet away from them was a 10-foot by 10-foot screen with a projector going on there with my little remote. So not being the one that was going to let this opportunity get away because I had 1 person there, and by gosh, I was going to see it through. I was sitting there and I was talking to her and I was clicking and I was going through this World's Awesomest presentation, and I'm going through and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm clicking, and then all of a sudden a couple people just kind of go walking by inside the lobby, and I kind of look over for a second, but I go and I let that go and I get back to the presentation and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm going and I'm selling and I'm going and I'm selling. And then all of a sudden I saw these like lights come on beside me, thinking, well, okay, no big deal. Focus, focus, focus. I'm going to stay locked into here because I got a perfectly hot prospect sitting here. And granted, it's not 40 or 50, it's 1, and I'm still selling 1-to-1, and I spent $300 selling 1-to-1, but I'm closing the deal. So I'm sitting there and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm clicking, and then all of a sudden I hear this noise. It sounded like a popping noise, kind of a noise that you maybe only hear if someone's playing racquetball. Yes. There was an open window right next to my presentation. They turned on the lights and they began a game of racquetball literally about 12 or 13 feet from where I was standing. So as they're playing racquetball, and as I'm doing the presentation, and I'm getting through this whole part, and then at the end, of course, I go for my killer close, which at that time was, "So what'd you think?" She said, "That looks pretty interesting. Let me think about it." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll catch up with you in a few days." That was the big close. She walked out and she left. But on a learning note, is failing publicly ever fun? No, especially when we call it failing. But if we call it learning and we call it feedback instead of failing, sometimes it doesn't make it quite so bad. So what did I learn from doing that? Well, number 1, I had gone out and just invited a whole bunch of people, just telling them, yeah, this is a great way to make some money, and I really didn't do any kind of qualifying, number 1. Number 2, I did absolutely no real kind of follow-up with these people whatsoever. I didn't do anything about talking to them the night before, the day of, creating some form of reminding them within 24 hours and maybe even within a few hours of the event, just to make sure I could gauge their temperature and really know what was going on. Third thing, I really didn't create an urgency for them to come. I just said there's going to be some great thing and some great opportunity and some great way to make money, and that's all good. But if they didn't come that night, which was probably inconvenient for them on some levels, they knew maybe they were just going to see me the next day or 2 or 3 days later at work. So I didn't really create any real urgency, real call to action for them to be there in the first place. And the fourth thing, and by far the most important thing, the market to the message. I thought that if I just invited 50 people and said, you're going to be able to make a ton of money, everyone would have interest in that. We know that's not true. We know now that we want to go out, and if we're talking to 50 people, there may really be 4 or 5 people within that 50 that really are the fit, that really are the ones with whom you should be speaking, that really matter, and that your message has an impact and will go ahead and resonate and create a stir and some internal emotion with them. That connection is where you want to be. I would have been far better suited to invite 4 or 5 people to create a really great atmosphere and event to do that, rather than broadcasting to 50 people and say, everybody come because we're going to get rich, and realizing I was talking to a whole bunch of the wrong people in the first place, and all I did was expend energy, emotion. So if you're going out to do any kind of, whether it be a small or larger group presentation, take those 4 lessons into hand, and it will help you like crazy make sure that you don't go through the same kind of struggle and pain that I got to go through all those many years ago. And I will look forward to talking with you soon. Have a great day. 1, 2, what? I fail to see the downside of this.